I'm with Brett Haigler, who's a senior commercial banker, a certified commercial lender, the co-founder of InBank, which is based in the Denver metro area. Brett, you've spent your entire banking career outside of the time you spent working in college for a mortgage lender in Alabama in the Colorado market. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So you've seen a lot of change in Colorado. When I first chatted with Brett recently, it was prompted by a response to one of the earlier NedTalks, and I thought it was a brilliant response to one of the challenges that a lot of bankers face, which is how to help their business owners navigate the challenges of transitions. We know from research that a high percentage of business owners, some would say between 70% of them, are thinking about a transition in their businesses in the next 10 years, say. But Brett's somebody that's been around and has seen that happen, and has also been involved. And I'm interested in you talking a little bit about this. You actually had the experience of transitioning a business. It was a business that your wife was involved in. It was her family trucking business. When did that happen? And can you summarize briefly what you learned in the process?
I learned more from that experience than anything else in my life, and more than the Omega Performance course that I took on commercial banking, more than banking school in Madison, more than anything else. That experience really shaped who I am now as a banker. But difficult experience. We did not expect to inherit the business. It was unexpected. The timing was not ideal. It was the height of the Great Recession,
Mm-hmm.
2009. The company was struggling at the time, like pretty much everybody else was. They were doing, aggregate hauling, so they had some construction exposure, and the whole construction was, struggling in general at that time. But they never had a banker, and so nobody was giving them advice other than their CPA, and their CPA was a small firm that mom and pop, type of CPA firm that they had them on 4 different fiscal year ends, so the CPA could manage their time. But that was difficult, to track the financial performance of the business, especially since 2 of the companies were cash and 2 of them were on accrual, and they had 2 different accounting systems, and neither would switch back and forth between cash and accrual. So it was a real challenge to figure out, where the money was, and to help them get a loan. So all of that had to get cleaned up. That took a lot of time. Um, and and then I was successful in getting them a loan, which that was interesting, being on the other side of the table. Very difficult at that during that time, to get a loan. Most banks were struggling, but I was successful. Probably wouldn't have been had I not been a banker, but got the job done. And I couldn't do it at my bank, obviously, conflicts of interest. So had to find another bank out there to do it. And then we had to, I started learning about exit planning, and I read this book. Well, actually, it was this book, but it's by the same author, John Brown, of Minor and Brown, and went to their BEI exit planning boot camp. John started, BEI around that time, so I went to that class, learned a lot about exit planning because suddenly it was near and dear to my heart. And so I became the part-time unpaid CFO of a struggling trucking business for 9 years. And that's
While
how
being
long it took.
being a full-time banker for that entire period.
Yeah, but that's how long it took to execute this plan. And the moral of the story there is, when you start talking to somebody about an exit plan, if they're not ready, or if they haven't already been preparing for this, if they're not already aware, it could take them many years to get that business positioned for a sale, that's maximized or at least acceptable. And so many bankers, I think, fear the sale of their customer's business because they lose the business when that happens most of the time, not all the time. But in my experience, I've either kept the customer, the new buyer, becomes my customer, or at least the seller, when they get this pile of cash, they keep some of that money with me. So it's not all bad, but I've just found that having those conversations with the business owner, not only does it deepen my relationship with them and they understand that I actually care about them, but they start making better business decisions when they start thinking about the exit. And that makes them a better customer for me.
Yeah, without a doubt. So when you think about this, I mean, one of the questions that sometimes comes up is, when do you have a conversation like this? And you point to the fact that a lot of transitions actually take a long time, from when people start to articulate their plan to when they actually can consummate a transaction. When do you, as a banker, typically engage with your business clients on this subject?
Well, it's part of the interview, the underwriting process.
Right from the beginning,
Yeah.
almost. Yeah.
Because I want to comment on, what their plan is and where they're at, where they are with it in my credit write-up. And a lot of times I have this conversation, they don't have an exit plan. I deal with businesses that are about 3 million in revenue up to about 100 million in revenue. And so those larger businesses, of course, they've got an exit plan, and it's, well documented. The smaller ones, a lot of times they don't. Sometimes, like one that just recently sold, I've been banking that customer for 12 years. And when I first started banking them, they didn't have an exit plan. They thought that their exit plan was to pass the business to their children. I asked if they had actually had the conversation with their children about that. And they looked at me with a deer in the headlights, look, no, they had not had that conversation. Well, when they went and talked to their kids about it, they were surprised to learn that their kids did not want to inherit the business. So that completely changed their exit strategy and their plan, and it changed many of the business decisions that they were making. And had I not prompted them to have that discussion, it would have been a disaster for them.
Well, for sure. And this goes to your earlier comment. These conversations can help you build a relationship and build trust, but it can also help the business owners clarify their own thinking, and actually can be very valuable to them. And the story you told is actually right on for that regard. So when somebody doesn't have a business plan, as a veteran banker, how do you approach that situation?
Well, I don't do any exit planning, but I know people that do. And so I just connect them with, one of my trusted advisor professional friends that is a exit plan, and let him do his thing. I know enough about it to introduce some of the concepts, to the business owner so they can start thinking about it. I usually recommend they read this book. And that will raise their awareness about a lot of these strategies and things that might apply to them, before they start spending a bunch of money on it. But sometimes they have an idea of a plan, but they don't know how to maximize the value of their business, and I'm very familiar with that. And so a lot of times I'm helping them understand, that the nose of the ship's got to be pointed up. You want to be growing, not stagnant, or worse yet, shrinking when you go to sell. And even if you don't want to sell anytime soon, you do want to have the option. Life happens, something unexpected may happen, and you want that business to be saleable if something like that does happen unexpectedly. And they usually respond pretty well to that. And like in the case with the couple that thought they were going to pass the business to their kids, once they figured out that wasn't the exit, then they started really focusing on growing that business and growing it profitably, and outsourcing a lot of the things that the couple were doing themselves, like HR and payroll and that, some of their accounting practices, and that makes them a more attractive acquisition target because there's less duplicative overhead between the acquirer and the acquiree. And it wound up helping them.
But
They
also,
recently sold.
yeah, and you made a point earlier, which I think is important. When as a lender, you're also concerned, obviously, about their success as a business. That makes them a better client. But you're also trying to minimize your risk. And if a business customer doesn't have a well thought out plan, there could be problems that are going to come back to really harm the bank as a
Yeah,
result.
I'll require key man life insurance, if they don't. The and it's all oftentimes in their best interest that they do that anyway, and so I'm introducing them to those concepts as well. But the profitability of the business, the growth trajectory of it, the long-term viability of it, all those things help them and help the bank.
Absolutely. One of the things you made reference to, the books by John Brown and his partner Ned Miner, which I'll reference in our notes for this conversation. I have read one of John Brown's books, and I thought it was extremely clearly written and very easy to follow. You also mentioned taking the BEI boot camp, which is one of the educational resources that John Brown's company does offer. Are there other things that you would recommend bankers do to get smarter about this? Obviously, they can't all inherit a business that they have to work out, but what are there other sources that you would point them toward?
No, I just think if they read the book, they'll get familiar enough with the concepts to be able to educate their customers about them, and then make some connections with some BEI exit planners in your area. They're all over the country.
Yeah.
And that will be, and I would have more than one because you never want to just endorse one, right? This is a very important role that they're playing. But what they are doing usually is being like a quarterback, marshaling various resources and doing an analysis of the company and deploying some of the strategies that John goes over in his book to help maximize the sale of the company. And they have a dog in that fight because usually they're compensated by a percentage of the sale. And so if they can maximize that sale price, then they're going to win, from having done that. But it's an art as well as a science, and not every exit planner is created equal, of course. So very important that you get the right exit planner to refer business to, because it can reflect poorly on you if you recommend somebody that's no good. That's one of the reasons why I try to hand out 3 cards.
Well, it's a good policy. One. Yeah, it also ties back to other advice that a business owner might need, whether it's from accountants or from tax attorneys or people that are specialists in M&A advisory work, generally speaking. But you do have to work to make sure you're doing the best for your clients. What advice would you give, Brett? You're part of a management team and you see the value in this yourself. But what advice would you give to other management teams in community banks about the importance of developing these kind of capabilities in their teams?
Well, if you're, a transactional bank and you're not really interested in a relationship with the borrower, then don't worry about it. Don't bother. But if you do, if you're a C&I bank like we are, and you want to develop close relationships with your borrowers and be their trusted advisor, I think it's necessary. I don't think you need to go to college. I don't think you need to go to boot camp. I don't think you need to get. I just think you better read that book or a book similar to it to get familiar with the concepts, because it's going to help your customer be a better customer for you. It's going to help you develop a deeper relationship with the client, a greater understanding of what their goals and objectives are, what they really care about. And what some of the challenges are in their business that you might be able to help them solve. That couple referenced several times already, they were working like 70 hours a week in the business, both of them, and they never took a vacation ever. And by helping them, outsource some of these things, it helped them get some freedom from their business to be able to take some time off, and reduce their stress level. And so that was all good for us too, it also decreased the dependency on that business on the two of them, because if God forbid something had happened to one of them, it was very much dependent upon those two people.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's a
so,
great, great story, and a testament to the value that you bring to the clients that you have and helping them think through these really important decisions. And I think it's fair to say that to the extent that commercial bankers get more proactive in initiating the conversations and helping people think through what's involved and connecting them with the right resources, everybody's going to be a winner. So thank you again for participating in this NedTalks, Brett.
my pleasure, anytime.